She was just like anyone else, curled up on her couch after a long day, scrolling through the gallery on her phone. It was supposed to be one of those harmless, almost mindless rituals we all do, revisiting old selfies, travel shots, and random pictures that capture fragments of our lives. But what she didn't expect was the one detail that would make her heart stop. At first, she thought it was just her imagination, a trick of the light, maybe a shadow, maybe nothing at all. But the more she swiped, the more undeniable it became. In the background of every single photo, whether it was her, a crowded cafe, a park, a bookstore, even inside her own apartment, stood the same man. Always distant, always blurred just enough to seem accidental, but always there. Who was he? And how long had he been watching her? The unsettling thing was how ordinary he looked. Not a monster, not a movie villain, just an average man you could pass on the street and forget about instantly. That somehow made it worse, because the thought crept into her mind. If he looked so normal, could she have passed him already? Could he be someone she knew, or maybe someone she'd spoken to without realizing? Her pulse quickened as she zoomed in on one photo after another, trying to convince herself it was a coincidence. But no, the timeline didn't lie. He was there in a vacation picture taken in another city. He was there at a friend's birthday dinner. He was even faintly visible in the reflection of a mirror selfie she snapped at home. And then came the realization that chilled her. This wasn't just her gallery. This was her life. A silent shadow had been stitched into every memory, every moment for the past year. The apartment suddenly felt too quiet, too heavy with the weight of unseen eyes. She lowered her phone, glancing at the window, the door, the corners of her living room, her skin prickling with the sense that she was no longer alone. But the real question wasn't just who he was. It was how long he had been watching and why. Because as she stared at the latest picture she had taken, just yesterday, she noticed something different. He wasn't in the background anymore. This time, he was closer, much closer. Her hands trembled as she set the phone down on the coffee table, but her mind refused to let it go. Every thought circled back to that same haunting question. Who was this man, and how had he managed to appear in her life so quietly, so persistently, without her ever noticing? Her name was Claire. She wasn't the type to imagine things or get lost in paranoia. She was practical, grounded, a schoolteacher who spent most of her days in front of chalkboards and stacks of assignments, the kind of person who laughed at horror movies and brushed off ghost stories. But this wasn't imagination. It was there, frozen into the very pixels of her photos, a year-long breadcrumb trail that she had only now discovered. Claire thought back to the past 12 months. It had been a year of changes, moving into a new apartment, adjusting to a new job, making an effort to go out more, to live a little after years of playing it safe. And yet, looking at the pictures now, that man had been with her for all of it, standing at the edges like some uninvited witness. The strangest part was how invisible he had felt until tonight. She'd never once turned her head and caught him staring. Never once felt that sharp, primal sensation of being followed. But what if she had mistaken his presence for coincidence? The man in the bookstore aisle browsing, just 2 shelves away. The one who stood at the back of the park during her morning run. The stranger waiting at the bus stop, face half hidden by a hood. Her heart thudded painfully as those memories overlapped with the photos in her gallery. Had she been living beside him this whole time, completely unaware? She forced herself to scroll again, studying his face, or what little of it could be seen. He always seemed slightly blurred, as if he were trying not to be caught. A hat here, a shadow there, always on the outskirts of her life. But in the latest photo, the one that froze her blood, he was different. He wasn't just part of the background anymore. He was standing only a few feet behind her, his features clearer, his intent harder to ignore. Claire pressed her palms to her face, struggling to breathe steadily. Maybe she was overreacting. Maybe it was some bizarre coincidence, someone photobombing her life without realizing it. But then another thought crashed in, darker, heavier. What if he wasn't just following? What if he was waiting for something? The weight of the unanswered questions pressed down on her chest. She wanted to call a friend, anyone, just to hear a familiar voice. But another fear stopped her cold. What if talking about him somehow made her more visible? What if acknowledging him gave him power over her? The silence of her apartment stretched on, broken only by the hum of the refrigerator. She stared at the locked door across the room, her mind whispering the thought she didn't want to believe. What if he was already inside? Claire didn't sleep that night. Every creak of the building, every rush of air through the vents made her heart jump. She sat in the dim glow of her lamp, phone clutched in her hand, flipping back through the photos over and over as if a new detail might appear the 100th time she looked. The more she stared, the more she realized something she hadn't noticed before. The man wasn't always in the same place. Sometimes he stood to the left, other times far in the background. But in each photo, his position seemed to shift closer, almost like a countdown she hadn't been aware of. A year ago, he was just a shadow near the edge of the frame. Months later, clearer, closer. And now, only a few feet away. What happens when there's nowhere else for him to move? By morning, exhaustion pressed down on her, but her thoughts wouldn't rest. She told herself she should go to the police, but another voice in her mind pushed back. What would she even say? That a man was following her through photographs? They'd laugh, or worse, tell her she was imagining it. Her flaw had always been hesitation. Even her friends teased her for it. Claire the overthinker, Claire who could never decide between choices, Claire who'd sit on decisions until they made themselves. Now that same indecision wrapped around her like a trap. Do nothing, and she stayed in danger. Do something, and she risked being dismissed or disbelieved. At work, she tried to act normal, but the paranoia followed her into the classroom. Each time the door opened, she flinched. A colleague noticed her pale face and asked if she was all right. She lied, said she was fine. But part of her wondered, what if he was here too, hiding among the strangers in the hallways, watching even as she tried to pretend life was normal? Later, while grading papers in the teacher's lounge, Claire made another discovery. She scrolled further back in her gallery, earlier than she remembered looking before. There, buried beneath old photos she hadn't touched in ages, was one from nearly 2 years ago. And her stomach dropped. He was in that one too. Not just last year. Longer. Always present. That night, she tried something different. She opened her laptop, uploaded the pictures, and zoomed in with software to study his face. That was when she noticed something even more unsettling. His expression. In the earliest photos, he wasn't looking at her. He seemed distracted, almost casual. But as the months passed, his gaze shifted until in the most recent pictures his eyes were locked directly on hers, as though he knew she would find him eventually. The realization made her slam the laptop shut, but it was too late. The image burned into her mind. If he had been in her photos for years, watching, waiting, then maybe she hadn't just stumbled onto his secret. Maybe he had wanted her to. And that left a far more terrifying question. Why now? The nights grew heavier, pressing down on Claire until she could hardly tell the difference between waking fear and restless dreams. Sleep came in flashes, broken by the sensation of being watched. And every morning, when she opened her gallery, there was a new photo waiting. She hadn't taken it. The first time, she told herself it was a glitch. Phones sometimes behave strangely. But by the third morning, denial wasn't an option. Each photo showed her asleep in bed, and in every one, the man stood a little closer to her. Her chest tightened. Someone was inside her apartment. She began locking the door 3 times, checking windows twice, pushing furniture against the entrance like some desperate ritual. But no matter what she did, the photos kept appearing. And the man, he was getting closer. By day, she tried to maintain normalcy. At school, her colleagues noticed the shadows under her eyes. One suggested she take time off. Another asked if she was being harassed. Claire wanted to scream the truth, but the words stuck in her throat. What proof did she really have? A gallery full of impossible photos? One evening, she finally reached out to her best friend, Emma. Sitting across from her in a quiet cafe, Claire handed over her phone. Emma scrolled through the gallery, her brow furrowing. "Claire, these look edited," she whispered. "Like some creepy prank." "It's not a prank," Claire snapped too quickly. "They show up by themselves. I don't take them." Emma glanced at her, eyes softening with pity. That hurt more than disbelief. Maybe you're stressed. After the move, the new job. Claire grabbed the phone back, anger sparking through her fear. Why wouldn't anyone believe her? Why did it feel like the more she tried to prove the truth, the more alone she became? But that night, the man gave her something new to fear. Another photo appeared. This one wasn't of her sleeping. It was taken inside the cafe. Same table, same lighting, same moment she had handed the phone to Emma. Only now, the image showed the man standing just behind her, blurred but unmistakable. Claire's stomach dropped. He wasn't just watching from the edges anymore. He was with her, near her friends, breathing the same air. Her world shrank into shadows and suspicion. She stopped opening curtains, stopped answering calls. Every sound outside her door could be him. Every knock in the hallway made her freeze. She thought about running, leaving the city, disappearing, but another thought clawed in. How do you run from someone who already knows where you sleep? That night, as she lay awake, she heard it. A sound too sharp, too deliberate. A knock. 3 slow, steady taps against her apartment door. Her phone buzzed in her trembling hand. A new notification. One new photo. This time, he wasn't blurred. This time, he was standing right outside the door. Claire's breath hitched as the photo glowed on her screen. The man, right outside her door. She didn't dare move, didn't dare breathe. For a long moment, the silence pressed in, broken only by the faint hum of her phone. Then another knock. 3 more taps. Slow, patient. Her heart pounded in her ears. She wanted to scream, to run, to call for help. But something inside her froze. Fear had rooted her to the spot. The phone buzzed again. Another photo. This time, not of her door, not of the hallway. It was a live shot of her, sitting on the bed, holding her phone, eyes wide with terror. She gasped, dropping the device onto the sheets as though it burned her. Whoever this was, they weren't just outside. They were in the room with her. Claire spun around, every nerve in her body lit with panic. But the room was empty. Shadows stretched across the walls, silent and mocking. Her phone buzzed again. Another photo. Same angle. Same moment. Only this time, she noticed something she hadn't before. In the corner of the picture, reflected faintly in the window, wasn't a stranger at all. It was Emma, her best friend. Claire's chest clenched, the betrayal hitting harder than any knock at the door. Emma had been there from the beginning. Emma, who brushed it off as stress. Emma, who had scrolled through the gallery and claimed the photos looked edited. Emma, who had been with her at nearly every moment the man appeared in the background. But Emma wasn't behind the camera. She was the camera. The realization hit like ice water. Emma wasn't just a friend. She was connected to him. Maybe she'd been feeding him details, setting Claire up, drawing her deeper into the trap. The photos weren't random. They were curated, personal, intimate. Another knock rattled the door. Harder this time. Urgent. Claire's phone buzzed again, vibrating in her trembling hands. She didn't want to look, but she had to. The photo showed the door, half open now, and, through the crack, Emma's face, smiling. Claire staggered back, her mind unraveling. Betrayal burned in her chest. How long had Emma been playing her? How much of her life had been orchestrated, controlled, manipulated? Her options spiraled in her head. Call the police, run to the fire escape, confront Emma face to face. But each choice came with danger. If she trusted the wrong path, it could be the last mistake she ever made. The phone buzzed one last time, the notification trembling on her screen. One new photo. This time, the image was of her future. A timestamp, tomorrow's date, her own face frozen in terror. And beneath it, a single message. Ready? Claire's lungs seized, her pulse racing like it wanted to break free from her chest. The photo still glowed on her phone. The door cracked open, Emma's smile gleaming in the gap. The message beneath it, ready, echoed in her mind like a countdown. She couldn't wait anymore. With trembling hands, Claire grabbed the nearest thing she could, a heavy lamp, and edged toward the door. Her body screamed with fear, but a fiercer instinct pushed her forward. Enough hiding, enough waiting. If Emma wanted her cornered, she would fight her way out. The knock came again, louder. The door rattled against the frame. Claire raised the lamp, adrenaline burning away hesitation. "Why, Emma?" she whispered to herself. "Why me?" And then silence. The apartment fell so still that even her ragged breaths sounded deafening. She dared a glance at her phone, half expecting another photo to appear. Nothing. Just black glass reflecting her own pale face. Claire inched closer to the door, her heart slamming with every step. She yanked it open, ready to swing. The hallway was empty. No Emma. No man. Just silence stretching down both ends of the corridor. Her grip loosened, confusion washing over her fear. Had she imagined it all? Had the photos tricked her into seeing what wasn't there? Her phone buzzed. One new image. She looked down and froze. The picture showed her standing right there in the open doorway, lamp raised, confusion etched across her face. And behind her, Emma. Claire spun around too late. The lamp slipped from her hands as Emma stepped into the room, her expression unreadable. "Why?" Claire's voice cracked. "What do you want from me?" Emma tilted her head, almost gently. "It was never about what I wanted. It was about what he wanted." Claire's blood ran cold. "Ooh!" Emma's eyes flicked to the shadows in the corner. Claire followed her gaze, then wished she hadn't. The man from the photos stepped forward. No blur this time. His face sharp, his eyes locked on hers with chilling calm. He wasn't just watching anymore. He was here. Real. Claire staggered back, horror and betrayal colliding inside her. Emma stood beside him now, their presence filling the room like walls closing in. "You were perfect," Emma whispered. "You never noticed." "Not until now." The man raised a phone of his own, its lens gleaming. A click. The flash burned the room white for a split second. And then, darkness. When Claire blinked her eyes open, she was alone. The door was shut. The room was silent. Her phone lay on the floor, the screen cracked. She snatched it up with trembling hands, praying for answers. One new photo. Her breath caught. The picture showed Emma and the man, both smiling, standing behind her unconscious body. And in the corner of the frame, a line of text appeared like a caption. "Your turn to watch." Morning sunlight spilled through the blinds, painting Claire's apartment in pale gold. For a moment, she almost believed the nightmare was over, that the photos, the knocks, the shadows had all been part of some fever dream. But the cracked screen of her phone still lay on the nightstand, and the last image, the one where Emma and the man stood behind her, waited like a wound that wouldn't heal. She hadn't seen them since. No more knocks. No more sudden photos appearing in her gallery. Just silence. And yet, that silence carried a weight heavier than their presence ever had. The question lingered. Had they truly left, or were they simply waiting again? Claire reported what she could to the police, but it was met with polite disbelief. Edited images. Stress. Hallucination from lack of sleep. The kind of story no one wanted to file a report for. She didn't blame them entirely. If she hadn't lived through it, she wouldn't have believed herself either. Emma's betrayal cut deeper than any photo could. How many years had their friendship been real? How many laughs, how many secrets shared had actually been part of some hidden performance? Claire couldn't untangle truth from deception anymore, and maybe she never would. But she knew one thing with chilling certainty. The man hadn't just chosen her randomly. Emma had brought him in, and that made every memory they'd shared part of the trap. Still, beneath the fear, something else stirred. Survival. Claire had looked into the eyes of the thing that haunted her for years, and though she had nearly broken, she was still here. Breathing. Awake. Aware. The photos had trapped her, stitched her life into a timeline she hadn't consented to. But she had stepped outside of them. For the first time in months, she wasn't waiting for the next image. She was making choices again. One evening, Claire deleted every photo from her gallery, not because she believed erasing them would erase him, but because she refused to let her memories be defined by his presence. She went outside, camera in hand, and took a picture of the sky, bright, open, unmarked by shadows. Maybe he was still out there. Maybe Emma was watching. Maybe the next photo would appear no matter what she did. But Claire had decided something important. Fear would no longer dictate her life. Sometimes survival isn't about erasing what haunts you. It's about refusing to let it own the rest of your story. As she stared at the fresh photo of the sky, she whispered to herself, almost like a vow, "If they're watching, then let them watch me live." And that's the part we forget sometimes, that even in the darkest stories, even in the most haunting chapters, there's still a choice. Fear can freeze you, or it can remind you how much you still want to move forward. So here's the question. If you found someone hiding in your photos, watching your every move, would you keep scrolling or finally take control?